Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this week's Postgraduate Academy Support Group meeting. Today is a very, very, very special day. This is because we have special guest Lewin Moodley on hand with us. For those who don't know, Lewin Moodley joins us 4 times a year. And this particular one is our 4th and final presentation, our final session by Lewin Moodley for 2023. She's spoken to us about emotional intelligence, adopting a growth mindset, effective communication, all involved in promoting your productivity along your professional journey. And today she'll be discussing accountability as well. So I don't know, I'm a little nervous, Lewin, it's our last session. How are we going to cope? But, you know, I have to, because it's our last session, just give a little background on who Lewin Moodley is. Lewin Moodley has over 10 years experience in the learning and development field with financial services and the insurance sectors. She is now the learning and development manager at her company. So she's very, very well equipped to discuss with us today the importance of accountability in meeting your goals and enhancing your performance or your productivity. This, again, within our support group meeting, it is meant to be very interactive, very casual. If you'd like to voice an opinion, by all means, raise your hand or type in the chat box, use your emoticons, your reaction icons, cheer us along if you'd like. If you feel comfortable within this forum, please switch on your cameras, say hi to us. And in fact, that might even be the preferred method for today's very special final session on accountability. If you're comfortable enough within this community, and for Lewin's final session with us, you're welcome to put on your camera and participate in that manner. Are there any other housekeepings? No. Well, with that, let's hear about accountability and let's have it help us grow. Lewin Moodley, the floor is yours.
Excellent, thank you. So just for your reference, I won't be using Menti because I think there's only 5 of us. So I think we may just use the chat, if that's okay. They can just pop it in the chat. Does anybody feel comfortable to switch cameras on? Seeing as your camera is on. Okay.
It must be a bandwidth issue, but you'll deal with my smiling face today.
Okay, no, that's fine. I won't be using Mentimeter for everyone else, so I will be asking you a couple of questions. If you could maybe just pop it in the chat, that would be great. Okay, awesome. So today we're talking about accountability, another one of my favorites. I haven't done this in a while, so this is going to be a good refresher for me as well. You know, as mentioned, this is the 4th session for the year. I can't believe that the time has flown by so quickly. I mean, it was literally the beginning of the year. We were starting fresh. We were getting things going and we blinked our eyes twice. Now it's almost the beginning of November. Gosh, time really flew. But here we are with the final session for 2023. Again, I'm going to have hope that all of you can take something away from the session or learn something that you didn't know before that you can keep with you when it comes to accountability. So as you know, with every session, I do like to start with going back to the basics, and specifically in this scenario, it is referring back to the definition of accountability. You will notice me look to the side. It's because I'm operating with 2 screens, and whatever I'm presenting is on my second screen. So the definition of accountability is the acceptance and obligation to carry out a responsibility. In short, it's the fact or condition of being accountable, also responsibility. So I know that many of us know what accountability is, what the definition is, but what I'm interested in hearing is what it means to you. So if you think of accountability, what meaning does that have for you? So some people will say it means that they're responsible for something. Some people feel it's generally something negative. So if you could maybe just capture in the chat box what comes to mind when thinking about accountability. Anything. Don't be shy. If you feel more comfortable, I could put up the Mentimeter. What are your thoughts? Is it Prof. Len?
We, we could do the Mentimeter, unless if anybody is uncomfortable, you can just send me a private message and I will read out your message anonymously.
That's a good idea.
Either one is fine. But I'd like to give my opinion about this because it's too long to type. So this accountability thing, I hear an angry auntie shouting, "Who's accountable here?" Like, so that's like a negative, who's responsible? And it, prior to your sessions, it's always been in a negative light. And that's changed.
So yeah, so I have one of the comments is my daughter who is 20 sweeping now her daily chore, which is great. She says that's accountability. Oh gosh, I just got a message that says my internet's unstable. So let me know if something happens. Let's hope everything remains the same. And then Elliot says it means to be, is that answerable? Yeah? Yes. Okay, and then your scenario was, whose fault is it? Yeah, that's the one that I get most. It means to take ultimate responsibility. So generally when I ask the question, people are always like, whose fault it is. Generally speaking, there's some sort of negative feelings towards being accountable and being responsible. So my main focus in this session is to give you a different perspective, a different view of looking at it. And the, how do you pronounce it? Is it Ramola? We keep using the word at mortality meetings. Yes. Okay. Okay. So I want to change your perspective on accountability and what it means to you. My intent here is to heighten it. But before we get into the nitty-gritty, I want to play a scenario with you and I want you to review accountability in practice. Okay, so I'm going to give you a scenario and then you're going to tell me which option you would choose in terms of the outcome. All right, so here's the scenario. You receive a telephone call from your cell phone provider stating that your monthly repayment was not received. I feel like this scenario is becoming more frequent in these days. Times are tough, man, the economy. Anyway, the cell phone provider is adding a late fee and requesting their payment. You are very surprised since the repayment is an automatic deduction which is debited from your bank account. You contact your bank and discover that they had a software problem and your account was debited in error. They fixed the problem. So just to re-explain the situation, let's say that you with Vodacom, and you're taking out a Vodacom cell phone contract. Each month, the repayment is deducted off your bank account for some odd reason because your bank had a software error or issue. That deduction did not go off, even though Vodacom tried. It was unsuccessful. So Vodacom is now contacting you to say that they have not received their payment. Okay, so that's the scenario. Now, these are your options. Option 1, 2, and 3. So if you had to pick just one action out of the following 3, what is the late fee and request your bank to reimburse the fee? So that's option 1. Option 2, pay your monthly repayments only, sending an explanation to the cell phone company as to why the payment was not received. Because technically, the bank had a software issue. It's not really your fault. Then finally, pay your monthly repayments and write a letter asking the cell phone company to reverse the fee, explaining what had happened. All right, so those are your 3 scenarios. If you are comfortable, I will move it to Mentimeter so that you can vote on which option you would choose. I'm going to put it in front. Let's just make that big. So you can join Menti. Here is the code. So you go to menti.com, insert this code, and you can choose option 1, 2, or 3. Just give you another 2 minutes.
And if you're unable to access Menti, you could also just pop the message in the chat box.
Chat. So far, we have 3 responses. 4. Option 1. Okay, awesome. So if I just have to re-explain the scenario to you. So Elliot also says option 3, excellent. So we've got a few for option 1, nobody for option 2, and then also another 2 or 3 for option 3. So in terms of what's the most accountable response, it's actually option 1, and I'm going to explain it to you. So if we go back to the scenario, let's just move that away. So if we go back to the scenario, you have to remember that you have 2 different agreements. One with the bank, you have an agreement that you had made with them in terms of ensuring that they secure your money, your salary, any amount that's paid into there, but you also made it possible for example, for them to transfer payments or have deductions done on your banking account. So that's one agreement. Then you have a separate agreement with your cell phone provider, which in this scenario is Vodacom. You agreed in the beginning of your contract that you would ensure that payments would be received at a specific period, whatever date, the 25th of the month, by the end of the month. That was the agreement that you had with Vodacom. So those are 2 separate agreements. The fact that there was a software issue, for example, on your bank side, it really has nothing to do with Vodacom, because your responsibility was to ensure that the payment got there timeously, regardless of how you did that. Whether it was via EFT, SnapScan, I don't know, there's so many different payment methods these days, but your responsibility was to ensure that money is paid on time, right? The fact that there was a software error with your bank is sort of out of your control and is an error on the bank side and an issue and a fault on the bank's side. But those 2 things are separate. Those scenarios are separate. In terms of what is the best solution here for accountability, it's number 1, because you have to ensure that you fulfill your obligations, and that is ensuring that they have their payments, number 1. If there was a late fee that's charged, you are liable, because you, believe it or not, you most likely signed for this in the beginning of your contract, right? So the fact that you did not make that payment timeously means that you are liable to make that late payment fee. Having said that, you have the ability to hold the bank accountable for the error that they made. And how you would do that is you would ensure that the Vodacom gets their repayments and their late fee, but then you can transfer the late fee, the fees, to the bank and ensure that they reimburse you for their error. The reason why this is the best solution is because if you had chosen option 3, for example, option 3 says pay the monthly repayment, that's fine, but then this part is about write a letter asking the cellphone company to reverse the fee, explaining what happened. In this scenario, there is no, what's the word I'm looking for? Surety. There's no certainty that they will, in fact, reverse the fee. So there's a chance and a risk that you're exposing yourself to that they will increase the late fee because there's more days that you are continuing to be late on your repayments. So this option could put you in a worse predicament. The following month, the late fee could be double because you still had not paid what you initially agreed on. With option 1, you are in control. You have paid Vodacom the fee and the late fee, which is what they required. So they've gotten everything they needed. Whatever the issue on Vodacom's side, that stops because you've solved it. Now you're going to go after the bank and hold them accountable for the error that they made and hope that you get the money back from them. Option 1 is the most accountable option, but it's also the option that gives you the most amount of control. So when you think about accountability, I personally equate it to control and the level of control that you want in the situation that you're in. I'm going to play a video quickly and hope that I used sound. So please just let me know if I included sound.
How many of you are blamers? How many of you, when something goes wrong, the first thing you want to know is whose fault it is? Hi, my name is Brene. I'm a blamer. Let me just tell you this quick story. So this is a couple years ago when I first realized the magnitude to which I blame. I'm in my house. I have on white slacks and a pink sweater set, and I'm drinking a cup of coffee in my kitchen. It's a full cup of coffee. I drop it on the tile floor. It goes into a million pieces, splashes up all over me. And the first, a millisecond after it hit the floor, right out of my mouth is this: damn you, Steve. Who is my husband? Because let me tell you how fast this works for me. So Steve plays water polo with a group of friends. And the night before, he went to go play water polo. And I said, hey, make sure you come back at 10, because I can never fall asleep until you're home. And he got back like at 10:30. And so I went to bed a little bit later than I thought. Ergo, my second cup of coffee that I probably would not be having had he come home when we discussed. Therefore, and so the rest of that story is I'm cleaning up the kitchen. Steve calls, caller ID. I'm like, hey. He's like, hey, what's going on, babe? What's going on? So I'll tell you exactly what's going on. I'm cleaning up the coffee that spilled all, like dial tone. Because he knows. How many of you go to that place when something bad happens, the first thing you want to know is whose fault is it? I'd rather it be my fault than no one's fault. Because why? Why? Because it gives us some semblance of control. But here, if you enjoy blaming, this is where you should stick your fingers in your ear and do the na-na-na-na thing, because I'm getting ready to ruin it for you. Because here's what we know from the research. Blame is simply the discharging of discomfort and pain. It has an inverse relationship with accountability. Accountability, by definition, is a vulnerable process. It means me calling you and saying, hey, my feelings were really hurt about this, and talking. It's not blaming. Blaming is simply a way that we discharge anger. People who blame a lot seldom have the tenacity and grit to actually hold people accountable, because we expend all of our energy raging for 15 seconds and figuring out whose fault something is. And blaming is very corrosive in relationships, and it's one of the reasons we miss our opportunities for empathy. Because when something happens and we're hearing a story, we're not really listening. We're in the place where I was, making the connections as quickly as we can about whose fault something was.
That is Brené Brown. She's one of my favorites. But I'm sure that, you know, any of you, all of you watching that clip, I'm sure that there was some moments that you could really relate to. It's really easy for us to immediately want to, when something goes wrong, we immediately calculating whose fault it is and how it's absolutely not our fault. Why this happened or that happened. Whenever anything goes wrong, the first thing we want to know is figure out whose fault it was other than myself. And the problem with that is the minute you're looking outward, you're missing that opportunity to gain or regain or remain in control of the situation to navigate yourself towards a solution. Because the minute it's somebody else's fault, you can't really fix it. It means they need to fix it. But if you look inward, you are calculating and you're thinking about how you could have done this differently. And if you do that, you're moving towards a solution. And that's why she says she'd rather have it be her fault than anyone else's fault. Because if it's her fault, then she has control. Then she can try and figure out how to fix it, how to change it, how to make it better. And I'm going to give you a few examples of this. This story I've told a few times, but the session, or many of my sessions, sometimes it's really difficult. Right now, it's extremely difficult because I can't see anybody's face. But even if I'm in face-to-face sessions, as a facilitator, you can read people's faces. You know exactly how they're feeling, sometimes what they're feeling, maybe what they're thinking, but you read them very well. And you know when they're getting bored or when it's not fun or if they wish they weren't in the session. And it's not cool. As a facilitator, you don't want that. You always hope for your best wish as a facilitator is for people when the session's done to feel empowered, you know, and to feel like they have a lot of energy. That's the high you want to hit. And sometimes it falls flat. For me, I don't reach that high. And I remember one day I was walking home really frustrated because I could see that the employees were not enjoying the session. So I was a bit down. And I felt like, you know, there's just nothing that I can do. Your people are overworked, they're underpaid, they don't have time for this sort of sessions, even though I think it's great. It's they don't have time for it. You know, work is hectic, work's busy. And if you're listening to anything that I'm saying now, I'm sure you're nodding your head thinking, yeah, that sounds about right. But you see, that's the problem. That's the problem. And you fall so quickly into that trap of how it's somebody else's fault. So in that moment, if you listen to the things I was saying, I was blaming other people for my sessions being boring. I was saying it's because they overworked, they underpaid and whatever. That's why my sessions are not fun. And when I do that, I lost an opportunity to change it, to make it better, to make it maybe more engaging. And when I had that realization, I turned it around and I was like, wait, hang on. Maybe I can do things differently. Maybe I don't do training on a Monday and a Friday because people are swamped on a Monday and on a Friday, they're thinking about the weekend. So they checked out on those days. Maybe sometimes I could have coffee or something to eat or sweet or whatever. Definitely earlier in the morning is better because people are more alert. Maybe I should have some activities, you know, people like to do things to get involved with learning. So that's what I did, and I found a completely different outcome. So that that's the point I want to get across, is that it's so easy to look outward, but it's better to look inward, because that looking inward allows you to be creative, find a different solution, and very importantly, be in control. So the question, with whatever scenario you're facing with, you have to think about how in control would you like to be? That's the question you can ask yourself. Other than that, I always tell people to ask themselves 2 questions. The first question you need to ask yourself is there a possibility of this scenario happening again? So that's your one question. So if you think about my scenario, about my lesson and my session being boring, if I had to ask myself, is there a possibility of this situation happening again? The answer there would be yes, there's a chance. The second question you need to ask yourself is, are you comfortable with this? Are you comfortable with it happening again? You need to answer that. And if the answer is you are uncomfortable with it happening again, it means that you need to do something. You need to change something. So if there is a possibility of it happening again and you are not comfortable with it, you need to change something. You need to implement a new solution. You need to do something differently. And I can give you 1,001. From today onward, in this week, you'll pick up a scenario, a situation where you are blaming someone else for something going wrong, where you should actually be thinking about how you could do something differently. Just in last week, we had a major celebration at our organization, a farewell for our CEO. And we had the events coordinator who was in charge of the whole event. And at 5 o'clock, it was time for the event to start, or the farewell to start. And whoever was in charge of playing the video for that event had not arrived, was not there yet. They were late. I'm not sure where they were. So in that moment, the events coordinator was like, it's not my fault. I told them they had to be here at 5 and they weren't here at 5. It's their fault. So the question again is there a chance of something like this happening again? Yes, there is. Are you comfortable with this happening again? No, you're not. So you need to do something. You need to think about what you could have done differently for this not to occur again. So what could this person have done? If they want to be in control of the situation, they need to realize that they could have done something differently going forward, because at the end of the day, even though they delegated a task to a camera person who had to run some sort of video, even though it was somebody else's task, it was their event. Their name is next to the word event coordinator. So they're in charge of it. You need to be in control of that, or that person had to be in control. So that mistake happened. By saying it was the other person's fault, they would never revisit that scenario and think about how they could do it differently. If they think, okay, this was actually my event, surely there's something I can do going forward next time. Perhaps there could be a meeting 30 minutes before the time with all people that's involved in the event to ensure that everyone is there on time, all the equipment is set up, all the food is there, that sort of thing. So it's better to look inward, because then you in control for change, for solutions, for enhancements, for things to work better. I hope that I got that crystal clear. Gosh. So I spoke quite a bit about this, but we have something that's called the Oz principle. And it's derived from the movie The Wizard of Oz, because it's the story of 4 characters' journey to personal accountability. So the Oz principle refers to 2 actions you can take, or 2 types of responses. The first response is the above the line. And that's where you do it, solve it, own it, and see it. Or let me do it the other way around. It's where you see it, own it, solve it, and do it. And the first one is really hard, because that's the starting point, is seeing that you've added or you've contributed to the situation that you're in. People don't often see that they've also contributed to the situation. The below the line response is essentially when you are where you are pointing outward, where you making those connections, as Brene Brown mentioned, trying to figure out how this is not your fault, right? That's the below the line response. And some of the scenarios will be, it's not my job. That is number one. It's not my job. It's not my responsibility. Where you make up some excuses like, I don't have enough time. We don't have enough staff. The staff don't know what to do. Yeah, this is all about the excuses you make up where you convince yourself that it's not your fault. Just remember, you want it to be your fault because you want to have the control. Here's another short clip for you.
Whoa, that's not good.
Oh, I don't need this. I'm already late.
Somebody will come. Anybody out there?
Do you have a phone?
No. Sorry. Somebody! Hello? There are 2 people stuck on an escalator and we need help. Now, would somebody please do something? I don't believe this. You gotta be kidding me.
I'm gonna cry.
Well, there's not enough left to do.
So this probably seems absolutely insane to you. Because I mean, they could literally just walk up the steps. But that is what it's like when we are blaming other people. You have the power to do something about it, but it's so much easier to just point the blame on someone else. But what you need to remember is that the minute you are pointing outward, you're missing the opportunity for a golden solution. All right, so above the line, by behaving above the line, you are looking inward. You are accountable, you have control, and you are empowered. So we're going to quickly walk through these. See it, own it, solve it, and do it. See it. So acknowledge the problem. Be honest with yourself. Consider all the facts. Recognize the reality of the situation. Yeah, it's very difficult. This is really difficult to, I think I always say the first part is really hard because it's hard to notice that you are adding to the problem. We are so used to pointing out that it's difficult to actually look inward because it's so easy. We've been doing it so often. It's what we know. It's comfortable to blame. But I think the trigger you have is when you are pointing outward, when you're saying, it's actually not my fault. It was so-and-so who had to send this to me by 3 o'clock. They didn't. That is your trigger. Because the minute you saying this person had to, think about what you could do differently next time. How can you be more in control next time? That's the question you should be asking yourself. Own it. Acknowledge that you contributed to the situation. Get perspective of others and act on feedback. So yeah, you need to understand that even though you're in the predicament and you believe it wasn't your fault, there's something that you could have done differently to lead to a better or an enhanced outcome. And that is also admitting that you contributed to the situation that you are currently in. Cool, let's own it. I want to give another scenario. This scenario that I can remember happened a very, very long time ago. I was working with a personal assistant and a broker. So broker is somebody who has to go and see clients and supports them with taking out different investments. Yeah, so the personal assistant is the assistant to the person who needs to service clients, right? So this personal assistant would have to regularly set up meetings for the broker. The broker would agree to a certain time. The assistant would contact the client, set up those meetings, and on the specified date, off the broker would go and meet a client. And on this particular day, the advisor did not, or the broker did not see the client. The client had went to the meeting place wherever they were supposed to meet, and the broker did not pitch up. What happened is the client ended up phoning the assistant, screaming her head off, furious because it was a waste of time. As it, it was rightfully so. From the assistant's point of view, she was very upset because it wasn't her fault. And the broker should have taken responsibility and contacted the client back and apologized. So my question again was, is there a chance of this happening again? And are you fine with it happening again? And the assistant said that it actually has happened before. This is not the first time that it has happened. And then I asked, would it happen again? She said, yes. Are you comfortable with it happening again? She said, no. So for me, you need to do something. You need to implement something different that's going to lead to a different outcome. By you saying it's the broker's fault, and he should take some sort of ownership and responsibility and accountability. But by you pointing outward, releases the option for a solution or for being in control of the situation. If you think about, there is something that I can do here to change this outcome, you can get creative. Perhaps you should have a reminder email in the morning with the broker to say, look, these are your appointments for the day, this time, this meeting place, whatever the case may be. Maybe you should take up the whole scheduling and only schedule 3 appointments for the day, or not have 10 or 15 or however amount that the broker is seeing. But my point is that you have options. And in this situation, this was not the first time that the assistant had been in this situation. So there's for sure something that should have happened earlier on. And by doing nothing, added to the situation that she was in. I hope that makes sense. All right, solve it. Ask yourself, what else can I do to get the results I want? So how can I do things differently? And you can get creative. Many times I have people say, but Luan, I've tried, I've done this and it didn't work. So my response always is, there's always a solution. Always. There's always a solution. It just means that whatever you tried maybe didn't fit that problem. It means that you need to go back to the drawing board, get a little bit more creative, and test a different solution. Try it again. Just because you tried a solution once doesn't mean that it's the end. We can keep going until you find one that works. Okay. Recognize that some things are out of my control. So you got to work with what you are able to change. And then finally, do it. Take action, implement your solution, follow up relentlessly, and measure your progress. All right. Before I continue, do I have any questions? If you do, yes.
But I'm a blamer, and I'm feeling bad about being a blamer. So I'm seeing a little bit of positivity in being a blamer. In your scenario where your session you felt was boring, you kind of needed to do the blame game, even for a little bit, so that you knew how to respond, you knew how to fix it. The issue was that you needed a little bit more of an inward look as well, instead of these guys are just, it's all their problem. But there is merit, I think, in understanding your surroundings, assigning a little bit of blame, but then taking that ownership and trying to counter that blame. I recognize this person is tired on a Friday afternoon, perhaps, but I'm going to do something about it. See, I'm trying to fix this whole blame thing. I'm taking control here. But I really like that example.
Yes, I think there is something different about blaming and figuring out what went wrong. right? So if I sit and think about how can this be improved, I have to analyze what the possible holdups or issues could be. That would force me to investigate that. But when it comes to blaming, it's got nothing to do with me. It has everything to do with somebody else, and it's not my problem, right? So I think that's the difference there. And I think that it's so common that I don't want to say it's okay, but it's understandable. It's just that with this process and the Oz principle, it's encouraging you to look inward with the intent of regaining control over the challenge you are experiencing. And my hope for everyone that's on this call is to change their perspective on accountability, responsibility, and the blame game. Not only for when somebody is trying to hold them accountable, but also the minute they are wanting to blame somebody. Um, I, I hope that people can see it as, how can I do this differently? I'm in control of the situation, and I want to implement processes that would have a better outcome by following the Oz principle. Losing my words today, but I'm finding them as I go along. Right, so we do have 15 minutes left. I do have 2 more questions that I want to ask everyone on the call. So if you feel comfortable, I'm going to give you a scenario, and I want to, for yourself, you can see if you understand accountability and this sort of the concept that I've explained to you now. I'm going to play the scenario. You tell me who is accountable in the scenario that I'm giving you. Right, so the question is, who is accountable? First scenario. A supervisor delegates one of her tasks to Jane to complete. Jane accepts the task, but was not able to complete the task on time. Who is accountable? So the options, yeah, so is the supervisor accountable? Is Jane accountable? Who is accountable? Jane. I like that name. So I have one response. Is it really? Anyone else? Did you think about it, and now you're confirming your confidence? Okay, so we have one that's both. Another response that's a supervisor. Anyone else? Another supervisor. Supervisors need to be on point, guys. Anyone else? So we have 2 for supervisor and 1 for both. Okay, we have 3 for the supervisor. Okay, so fun fact, they are both accountable, and I'll explain. So if you listen to the sentence here, it said a supervisor delegates. So that means it was in fact the supervisor's task, but that supervisor, I'm going to say she, delegated it to somebody else to complete, right? Which is Jane. So ultimately, the person that before the task is assigned, the person whose name is next to that particular task is the supervisor, right? Now the supervisor delegates to Jane. Jane accepts to do the task, but she could not complete it on time. So in that situation, Jane is accountable for ensuring that she completes the task that was delegated to her on time. When Jane realized that she may not meet that deadline, she was responsible for ensuring that she communicates effectively to the supervisor to say, listen, I cannot meet this deadline. Can we renegotiate? Can we this? Can we that? In order to in order to complete the task that that was delegated to her. So they are both accountable. In the situation, the supervisor has maybe a higher percentage of accountability because it is in fact the supervisor's task that was delegated. So yes, it was a bit of a tricky one. Both accountable, supervisor, a little bit more of a percentage because, and I mean, if you think about it in both situations, you could look at it from both perspectives. The supervisor could learn from this, could do something differently next time, maybe have a check-in with Jane a week before the time to test the progress. That is something that the supervisor could do differently. On Jane's side, Jane needs to communicate, maybe ensure that she understands the full scope of the task before accepting it, maybe assessing the workload that Jane currently has. But there are things that both of them that could do differently on each side. Excellent. Last one. Scenario number 2. Where's my clicker? Okay. Who is accountable? 5 people are allocated to a group to complete an assignment together. Everyone is contributing to this task except one student who seems to be slacking. I know this is like a common issue with students. Who is accountable? On a side note, I do a lot of interviews with graduates, and one of the questions is, tell me about a challenge that you experienced and how you navigated that challenge. This scenario is always that challenge. It's always a group assignment that just doesn't go according to plan. Okay, so who is accountable? Is it the one student? Is it the entire group? It is, in fact, all of them. Because at the end of the day, each of them were assigned this task, and as a group, they had to collectively complete the task, even though one student is lacking. It's a group effort. They would have to, in this scenario, hold the other person accountable. So before I end the session, I do want to just rephrase a few things, but firstly, just make one statement. So I have found in my experience that some people tend to look, this is going to sound silly, but some people blame themselves too much. So what that means is they're always looking inward. It's always my fault. Or how was it, my fault? I've noticed that some people just naturally look inward and some people naturally look outward. So in those situations, as I'm saying it now, you will know if you look inward, if you naturally look inward, if it's constantly your fault, or if you're prone to look outward and blame people. You need to switch it up. And what I mean there is that if you know that you're constantly figuring out how this was your fault, that means that you need to start holding other people accountable. It can't always be your fault, because sometimes there are people in your process that is contributing to that challenge. And in that situation, it means that you're willing to change something on your side, but you need to hold somebody else accountable to ensure that they're meeting up to their own obligations. In this scenario, as the one student was slacking, this scenario means that you would need to hold that one student accountable. You doing your work, what was assigned to you in terms of an agreed task, but this one student needs to meet their responsibilities as well. And that's what I mean over there. Do I have any questions? That was a very long sentence that I just said, and I'm losing my voice. Any questions? Yes. Elliot.
Thank you so much for this opportunity, and thank you so much for a great presentation. In fact, I had just one example of a problem that I experienced as a coordinator of a specific cause. So in this, as a coordinator, there were other lecturers who were participating in this course, and at the end of the year, students had to write group assignments, as you have just pointed out. And there were about 5 lecturers, and as a coordinator, I had to collect assignments from the lecturers, students' assignments. So each lecturer had about 5 to 6 groups. And when these assignments were being submitted, let's say 5 of the lecturers brought all the assignments, and the 6th lecturer brought 5 assignments instead of 6. So 1 assignment was missing. But he sent somebody to bring these assignments to me. And then I realized that there were only 5 assignments. There was 1 missing. And then when I phoned this lecturer to say there is 1 assignment missing, and she said, no, there were 6. No, I said, I received 5 assignments. She said, no, there were 6. This was a very serious problem for me. So another problem is that the person who brought the assignments was a non-academic, and that was another problem, I decided to inform my supervisor about this, and then my supervisor said that was none of her problem. But I said, because I had already, I wrote an email, conveying this problem to my supervisor, but she said, it's none of my problem. So now I had a problem as to what to do. And I realized that there was going to be a very serious problem. And I ended up requesting students who those who were involved in the assignment that was not submitted to rewrite the assignment. Fortunately, students, agreed. They had to rewrite the assignment, and then I had to mark the assignment. And but eventually, after some time, this lecturer said, eventually she found the assignment, it was missing in some of her stuff. And well, that's how I tried to solve the problem, by asking the students to rewrite. But for future, to try and avoid this problem, I realized that because they were not signing when they were submitting, they just brought the assignments and then I had to count. But this one didn't bring the assignments, it sent somebody and then told me that the assignments were 6 instead of 5. Were 5. Were 6 instead, while they were 5 assignments. So I thought the best thing was to avoid problems is to make people sign when they bring something, so that they sign that they sign when I give them these, when they bring them to me, they sign, so that there is no problem in future. So that's how I thought the problem could be avoided in the future. So that is what I just wanted to share.
That is a great scenario, because it showcases that you could have taken the stance of, look, it's not my fault. They were supposed to give 6 assignments. So they didn't give 6 assignments. It's really not my fault. They need to ensure that all the assignments are collected and handed to me, and they did not do that, right? What was great in that situation is you navigated the challenge in front of you, what to do with the missing assignment. But then what was great is that you got creative in terms of how can we do this better going forward? And that's the control that you need. where you can look inward, as in what could I do differently to enhance this process and to have a better outcome. So now there's a signature, right? We can confirm that I have in fact received this, and there's evidence which you didn't have before. So that's
Yes.
a fantastic scenario. Well done, Elliot.
Thank you.
Could I just say, I'm so proud, Elliot. You know, I mean, I recognize you as a regular of these meetings, and I'm pretty sure you were at the accountability session that we held previously. And I'm hoping that in some small way, our previous accountability session had some impact in the responses. Like, woo, well done, I'm so pleased.
That's awesome. But yeah, ladies and gentlemen, that is the end of the accountability session. I sincerely hope that, number one, you'll be noticing how you may be pointing outward and blaming, and in that moment, take the opportunity to look inward and take control of your situation, get creative with solutions, and implement a different strategy. So that's all from me, right on the dot at 4:30. Thank you so much.
I'm
Thank
going
you.
to go home now
Bye-bye.
and issue an apology. I'm going to take control of a little situation I need to do. Thank you so much, Lou and Woodley. This was such a wonderful ending to your 4 sessions here with us this year. Thank you so much for helping us take control. It's helped. Clearly, it's helped. It's helped within this group, and we hope that 2024 we'll be seeing much more of you as well. For the community, our next session we'll be hosting. The SSS team will be back for a session titled "Mental Health First Aid Kit." That's another one of our sessions focused on the drivers to thriving in the postgraduate journey. So, looking forward to seeing you again next week, Tuesday, within the Postgraduate Academy Support Group meeting. Thank you for joining us today. Thank you again, Lou and Moodley. We're going to miss you. We'll see you next year. Goodbye,
Thank you.
everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.